Welcome to Module 3, Definitions and Outcomes. If you've been following along, you know that we're very aware that there are multiple models for critical thinking. We believe that while it's wise to consider such variety, it's also helpful to have a common understanding of what we mean by critical thinking, what we expect of our students, and how we know they're meeting those expectations.
When we developed the plan to focus on critical thinking, one of the early college-wide activities was agreeing on a definition and learning outcomes. In 2010, more than 700 faculty, staff, and students participated in defining critical thinking. We agreed it is using the skills to explore, evaluate, express, and engage in purposeful reasoning to reach sound conclusions, decisions, positions, and/or solutions. Once we had this definition, we began to work on suited learning outcomes for the QEP. In other words, what we want students to be able to do because our QEP focus is on critical thinking. In Module 2, Critical Thinking Basics, Ileana and Liam talked about the two legs of critical thinking, that is skills and dispositions. Let's revisit that now as we talk about our QEP outcomes. We have 4 outcomes in all. 3 of them are in place so we can measure students' skills, and the 4th is intended to measure their willingness to think critically, which is their dispositions. Outcomes were developed over 2 semesters with input from faculty, staff, administrators, and external reviewers. Here are the QEP outcomes. 1. Students are able to analyze and interpret relevant information. 2. Students are able to reach conclusions based on a demonstrated reasoning process. 3. Students are able to evaluate and explain relevant information. You might note that those 3 are our skill-based outcomes. What each of these skills look like when it is practiced will vary from one class to another. Resources in the workbook might help you consider how students can demonstrate these skills in the course you teach, the assignments you give them, or in other interactions you may have with them, such as advising. Finally, we have the last one, which is the dispositions outcome. Number 4, students will exhibit effective dispositions known to characterize critical thinkers.
A variety of assessment instruments are used to measure these outcomes. Some are used to measure the outcomes directly, and others are for indirect measurement. Most instruments measure only the skills-based outcomes. Description of these instruments are included in the workbook, but let's take a look now at those direct measures. First of all, it's important to note that we are measuring each outcome separately. To measure each skills-based outcome, we have 2 instruments. First, we're using an external, standardized, and normed assessment called the California Critical Thinking Skills Test, or CCTST for short. And second, we're using samples of student writing that are scored with an internally developed critical thinking rubric. In both cases, students are sampled randomly as a part of our existing general education assessment process. Additionally, some students are sampled from classes taught by faculty who have been involved on the QEP committees. It's our goal over time to share the critical thinking rubric with instructors college-wide who may be able to use it for various assignments in their classes. Adding the rubric to existing course assignments may give us a different picture and one that is more closely aligned to course content that includes critical thinking. The instrument we use to measure the disposition outcome is called the California Critical Thinking Disposition Inventory. The students who take this assessment are randomly selected annually from classes taught by instructors who have been involved on QEP committees. The bottom line is that we want to keep an eye on how well students are demonstrating the critical thinking skills we've identified to see those skills improve over time during the college-wide focus on critical thinking. And we'll do this by using a variety of assessment tools. The takeaway for this module? Learn more. Know the skills we expect students to demonstrate and know how to recognize those skills. We've given you more information in the workbook and invite you to dig a little deeper. And if you teach, we hope you will consider also learning about the critical thinking rubric to see if it might be useful in your classroom.
This concludes Module 3, Definitions and Outcomes. We're glad you joined us and hope you'll keep the conversation going.